Hospital District board meeting will now come to order. And first of all, we'll ask Alan to give us a prayer, please.
Father, we just want to thank you for the privilege that we've taken, get to come together, Lord, and we thank you for the opportunity that we get to take and reach out to help the people in the public. Lord, we just ask for your wisdom to come in and preside over everything, Lord. Lord, and let everything that we do be taken to honor you, Lord, and to glorify you. Lord, we just want to say that we love you. We do this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Our council election for place 1 and place 3 action.
Thank you. Included in the packet is an application of unopposed candidates where we certify that place 1 and place 3, that those two places are unopposed for the election. So we would ask you to cancel the elections for place 1 and place 3. We will still be having the election for place 5 because it is an opposed race, but we would ask you to cancel the election for place 1 and place 3 at this time.
Okay.
And May 12th will be the day of the election.
May 12th is the election.
What will be the election site?
Election site will be City Hall and then also the Methodist Church at Lasbetty, because the district extends into Palmer County.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do I have a motion to cancel the election for place 1 and place 3?
I move we adopt the order of cancellation, place 1 and place 3.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor? Okay, action carries. Next is to appoint the election judge and alternate judge, info action item.
Also included in your packet is the order of appointment for election judges and alternates. And this will be for the election for place 5. We'll be appointing an election judge and then an alternate judge to serve for the Muleshoe box and then an alternate judge for the Lasbetty box because we need someone in charge at both places. The appointment that you were given has Vicki Morris serving as the Lasbetty alternate election judge, and she called me this afternoon and is not going to be able to do that. So we scrambled, as long as we have an alternate judge and an election judge who reside in the hospital district, then they're qualified to serve as an election judge. So I spoke with Deborah Noble, and she was in touch with Ruby Henderson, who has worked numerous elections for Bailey County, and she has agreed to serve as the alternate judge at Lasbetty. So if it be the pleasure of the board, I would ask that you appoint these people as election judge and alternate judges.
Okay, do I hear a motion to appoint Deborah Noble, Virginia Bowers, and Ruby Henderson for election judge and alternate judge?
So move.
I'll second that.
Made and seconded, all in favor? Okay, no opposed?
If I could leave these and the signatures. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
appreciate it. Okay, next, employee health insurance.
That's me.
Rhonda, I've forgotten your last name.
Tonic.
Rhonda Thomas.
Yes.
Thank you.
I believe in your package you've got the spreadsheets. Okay. Where you feel most comfortable with me at here. Okay, what I've got for you shown first of all is just to let you know we did shop the market again. We try to do, as a benefits agent, we represent all of the insurance companies that are competitive in this area. So we went to all those insurance carriers to see if there's another alternative other than First Care. I've got a rate sheet for you in there that shows the companies that quoted, which will be higher than what you have with First Care. It kind of lets us know that First Care has the rates in line, although we've got an increase from First Care again. The Plan A, this is under the spreadsheet with the HMO at the top, should be the first one in your packet. Everybody's on an HMO plan. We have a PPO option as well, just to be available for out-of-network coverage, but primarily, we're just looking good to talk about the HMO plan. You currently have a $1,500 deductible, 80/20 after that, then another $3,000 out of pocket. The second column here keeps those benefits the same. And at the bottom, you see the current rate of $423.35 with the renewal increase to $445.58. That's per employee per month. So if we just want to renew with First Care and keep things going as is, there's an increase involved there. What I put for you towards the end of that column would be, here's the cost that the hospital is absorbing right now. Out of that total premium, what you are paying per member per month is $330.25. If you take on, which is about $27,000 per month, that's based on 81 employees, which was our enrollment during the renewal time. Annually, $321,000. If the hospital absorbs the increase, then your rate goes up to $352.48, brings your monthly cost to about $28,000. Does everybody follow for that okay? All right, I just want to give you an idea of the expense that you're looking at, should you take on the increase. And then down below that, if you shift the cost increase over to the employee, so if the hospital keeps the budget at $330.25, their current rate per month is $93.10, and they would go up to $115.33, and we divide that per pay period. You could always split that difference or whatever you wanted to do. This was to give you some numbers in mind, and it seems like that was kind of a discussion last year when I was before you that we needed to discuss who would share the cost of one. Column B gives an option of increasing our deductible from $1,500 to $2,000, keeping the drug card and office visit co-payments the same. That brings the cost pretty much down where it was, $424.51. So $331.41 would be your cost if you take on, that little bit of increase, keeping it pretty much the same as it was. The employee then would have another $500 in deductible to make sure they have charges to go towards their deductible. The last column, column C, keeps the deductible at $1,500 but raises the drug card co-payments. So currently 10 for generic, go to 15, and it would go up from 35 to 40 on a preferred brand and from 60 to 70 on a non-preferred, keeping the high technology and injectables at 20% cost share. That's $434.55. Then we're at $341.45 if you absorb the increase in the hospital. And we've got the employee members. That's the main page I wanted to go over with you. Do y'all have questions or discussion on that at this point? I'll go through the others and then we can talk about the numbers a little bit more if you want to. The next page, PPO plans, as I mentioned, nobody's on that plan, so we just have to keep it as it is. If you have increases, it gets pretty high, it's probably $558, it's going to $611. If we increase deductible to $2,000, it's $584. We can do this plan differently. If we choose on the HMO plan to keep it a $1,500 deductible, we want to make this one $2,000, something like that, to keep it more affordable, we can do that. You can pick different plans. But like I said, that's an option that you're just required by law to have when you have an HMO plan over 50 employees. The last page, or the second to the last page, shows other carriers that we quoted. Aetna, try to present you similar plans. Their rate's $575 per employee. Blue Cross, $1,500 deductible, also $542, and United Healthcare was at $490. Assurant declined to quote. And then the final page, this is just a cost comparison for you per member per month, and that includes the dependent rates and just how we've trended since 2004 with First Care. Y'all been with them for a long time. Of course, they want to continue your business. And then the bottom line there, we'll put new numbers in based on whatever you decide tonight. Got questions? Have thoughts on what you might want to do?
Would the employees be willing to go up on their prescription drug copay in order to keep the $1,500 and not go up on their premiums or have less premiums to pay? You're still
The few
paying
that
some
I have
more.
visited with have said they would rather keep their medicine the same and go up a little bit, because that would be, it wouldn't go up as much as what the medicines would
Oh, okay.
every month. I haven't visited with a lot of people on that, but the few that I have visited with, that was kind of their feeling.
So the feeling is to disregard number C again.
Really, they didn't want to go up more on their prescriptions at all.
For a lot of people, the prescriptions may be a monthly cost that they're seeing, so going to the pharmacy, if they're taking a maintenance drug, where fewer people reach their deductible. And so we probably, by increasing the copay there, the drug card will affect more people financially.
The difference between A and B is basically your deductible.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
That's it.
They would probably prefer keeping it at 1,500.
Well, yeah, they would prefer.
I mean, even if there is a small, it's not a whole lot, what is it, amount right here? Depending on the inflation right there. They would be going up about, 20, almost $22.
If the employee has to absorb all of it, it'd be about $10.
Any discussion?
Well, I do. You know, we come across a deal now that we're saying we're gonna have to cut every corner that we can, because honest. I'm gonna propose we go with plan D here, and, the employees may just have to help a little bit until we get through this deal. You know, that's just my way of thinking at the moment. You know, their payment per month is basically the same. The payment per month for the hospital will be very similar. And, the difference is just gonna be the deductible.
David, could the hospital be able to stand the whole increase?
As I've said for the last 4 years, no. We just about stretched ourselves to the limit. It'd be very hard for us, and I would advise us not to. That doesn't mean I think that the employees can.
Yeah.
I'm just speaking from the perspective of the hospital and the nursing home, is that we pretty well stretch ourselves to the limit right now. So I would advise us not to pick up any more. But that's, again, that's a board decision, and we will work with whatever the board decides to do.
Okay, so if we went to plan B, the hospital would be saving 22,000.
Well, it's gonna be basically the same what we're,
But yeah, that's right.
what we're spending right now.
Oh, I was looking at the annual cost. Yeah. But I mean, if we stay with it, I'm sorry, I said it all wrong.
Yeah, on B, you're looking at, in both cases, within $1. Yeah, that's what it is. And then picking up the difference in the.
I don't know who to ask on the employees, how many of the employees over the year use up their deductible?
We have quite a few that do.
Quite a few. Okay. If we do go to plan D, whether they're out another $500 per individual, is that going to create a real hardship on them? Good question.
You know, I think more what we'll see is maybe we may have some people drop it the insurance, and then we're probably not gonna get payment at all. Or we will have, people that just don't get the deductible paid. I mean, that's the worst thing I think of, you know, they just owe us money if they do it here.
Mrs. Amy, you said we had 81 enrolled this year. How many employees do we have total?
We have about 175,
Really?
180.
What are the rest of them doing? Just without insurance?
We had a lot this year that just said, you know, I'm just gonna go without insurance this year,
Because they can't afford the premiums?
I guess, you know. But who knows why? Just, you know, I've got some bills, I'm gonna just get off the insurance this year. Now, I will say we've had several come in and sign up to get back on it this year because they've seen how that wasn't a real smart move. But
They are able to do that, they're able to sign back up if they,
only at open enrollment. And this is open enrollment month, because this
Okay.
contract starts April 1st.
So tomorrow's the last thing.
do you have an open enrollment month every year?
Yes,
One time?
yes. I know it's not anything that we want to look at. I have told people it may go up a little bit, you know, I didn't know if we could split the difference, you know, with the hospital, but I told them, you know, there may be a small increase in the premium, or in the amount that comes out every paycheck.
Cost-wise, it's not as bad as a lot of facilities. It really isn't. I mean, there's a lot of facilities that are pulling out and not even offering insurance anymore. So actually, to get their medication and stuff, it's not a bad deal. It really isn't. If we have to go up a little bit, it's not the end of the world.
Leland, on other entities in the community, not naming them, but don't you see quite a higher deductible in some of those?
In the other employers in this area?
Yes.
Yes.
About what? Could you say?
$2,000, a lot of them are, some of them even up to $5,000. I had two that we called on today that had $5,000 deductibles.
And there's some facilities, unless you're in management, you don't even get health insurance. So, I mean, it could be a lot worse.
It's benefit to those that can afford it, no matter what they have to pay. Because the district's out quite a bit of money paying for those to do something. It's unfortunate for those who can't afford it.
You know, those that have their spouses or their children or their whole family on it, you know, they may be glad to only get the $500 change in that because you're going up $50 a month. Otherwise, that's only if you need it. You have to use it.
I don't know what we need to do. And I hate to go on, not implement, but we went about as far as we go, I think. Just don't know.
It's a tough decision. It sure is.
Well, for the benefit of the hospital, these big as almost.
No, $20,000.
ours, but we are supposed to be looking for the benefit of the district, and the employees work for the district, so it makes it
Yeah.
real hard decision, but we do have to look at finances. We don't want to go rural.
If we split the increase, Suzanne, though, do you think keeping the same plan and splitting that bit of increase with the employee and then, but the hospital's not going to take on anymore? That's really not going to be an option.
I don't think it's.
It'd be
That's off the table.
10,000, they cut the hospital, back down 10, 11,000. That's big. That's a big difference.
I hate to do it, but I think we need to go with it. So we can kind of get out from under some of this stuff.
Let me ask you this, if we go with B, we will not have an option to go back to A until next year, am I correct?
You know, normally I would just say yes, that would be the case, it'd be difficult, we may be able to get an exception, so should something change down the road, we could always ask. I think the general, next year would be the normal time to do it. If something did come up, we said, hey, we've had something where we feel like we want to do that, we could request to change it and see if underwriting would approve it.
Why do you see the increase? Why are we just?
The increase in the health insurance, well, your loss ratio is pretty high. They've collected a little bit more than they paid out, but not much. I've got a report on that, I can tell you what it is. Do you mind handing me that pad blue? Oh, you're fine.
Will it change anything in this government health insurance plan that's under consideration right now?
You know, a lot of things are gonna change with the government program. We'll be talking something different whenever that, depending on what happens.
Right.
Well, if it passes, they're forced to take the insurance, or they're gonna get fined. So all we have to do is offer it, but they're gonna be forced, I personally don't think it's gonna pass.
An employer will also be fined,
Yeah.
because you're a group of more than 50, and you could receive a penalty of $2,000 per employee that don't take the insurance, but yet opt for one of the exchange programs that they're coming out with or working towards, which is state or federal insurance that will be available as an option. So if they leave your health plan and they choose to go with one of those plans, you as an employer will be fined. So I think we may find more employers that don't offer health insurance benefits. I think insurance companies will raise the rates because of the mandates that are being put on them. It's not going to be pretty. So I'm hoping for some things to change.
Even if everybody has it back, rates will still go up.
They're still, I mean, they always have, that's the way they've trended, but you've got medical costs that continue to rise, and the healthcare reform's done nothing to help with medical costs and those types of things, as you know here, but you have new things coming out. It's just, I don't have a solution for it, I just know what's in place, it's not. But your losses, the premiums that you paid in, claims paid out, and this is from February of 2009, so it's totaling it out, $1,124,000. And the premiums you paid in are $1,000,004. So your claims are staying up with your premium, in other words. All it would take is one big loss to send you the other way for your loss ratio. They're not making money on it right now. That's the reason for the increase. And then by looking at other carriers, I think what we found, we did find other carriers that would quote you that were interested in you, but yet we're going, the reason your premium versus claims are so high is the premium really with First Care is still reasonable. If you pay the $500 rate with Blue Cross, your claims are going to look a lot better because you're paying more premium. But it just proves that we're okay on the rates with First Care. Also looking at other facilities, we were talking about, Jen was talking about deductibles being higher, and the groups that I represent, $1,500 for the most part is about the minimum deductible we see. We do see a lot higher deductibles, so I agree with you that we're just seeing that trend more and more.
All the claims that were paid, the $1,004,000 claims that were paid, how much of that was spent back here in Muleshoe, and how much of it went to Lubbock? Anybody have any idea?
I don't even know that I can get rid of that.
Do I hear a motion? Do you want to entertain a motion?
I'll entertain a motion that we accept Plan B with First Care.
Second?
I'll say,
Okay, it's been made and, motion and seconded that we accept Plan B under First Care. All in favor? Motion carries.
Thank you very much, I appreciate your business.
Thank you.
Okay, now the audit report.
well, good afternoon. I've got a little setup to do that, this is probably the same thing you guys have in your book. Is this draft the same as down in with them?
We didn't get one in the book, we didn't have it in time.
Okay.
We didn't get one in time.
Well, then we'll make sure every time is over. And let me circle around here, see if I can get it. It was working last time. Famous last words. It'll probably be bright enough with the lights on. Yeah. If. Well, I know y'all don't want to hear this. When I left Waco, it was raining and cool. Yeah, you should have brought some with you. Well, it gets too big when I put it on the table, so we will use the handy dandy projector adjuster here. And I carry around with me. Okay. Is it me or the room is not square across the roof? All right, it's got to be one bend. Let me attach my projector and we'll get ready to go. Thank you. Sorry for me. Quit passing out. You need one more?
Yeah, well, when we're
Make
gonna,
sure I can
we're
get
gonna have to
two of
get one
those.
like they have at school, and it comes down, and, you know, go through.
I just need to keep one for later, not right now.
Okay, then I need one. All right, thank you so much.
That's all right. But I'm required to keep a copy in case people start.
You don't get it.
Hard. All right, we're getting closer, closer, closer. All right, now the moment of truth. Come on.
There it goes.
Okay, now, let's see here. And one more adjustment. We'll be ready to go. Thank you all for your patience. All right. Let me get back to the beginning of my presentation. We'll see if we can make this work. Okay, good. I've got it. I'm sorry, y'all are going to get my back a little bit. But I usually talk pretty loud. I was at a presentation a long time ago in Colorado City, and there were several presenters at the end. A person from the audience came up and said, "I really enjoyed your presentation. It was the best." And I felt pretty good till she finished. And she said, "You were the only one I could hear." Whether or not it's the best presentation, I don't know, but it'll be the one that you can hear. I'm here to talk to you about your 2011 audit. And was it last year I was struggling to be late? I was, yeah. Well, I made sure that I didn't have a meeting booked in front of this, so I've been gradually visiting people, but I'm here. Let's see if this will finish now. Okay. This is a pretty good map of what our office does here in Texas. We work with community hospitals all around the state, very much like the facility here. Probably one of the new items is that instead of PMF, we're now BKD. And we joined up with these guys because they have a big healthcare presence here in Texas and also in the rest of the central United States. The couple of questions always come up is, well, how soon will they close your office in Waco and how much will our fees go up? And that we made them sign a long-term lease for Waco because the people that do the work in hospitals like yours are all based there and they're not going to move to Dallas. And that the other thing is they understand the fee structure for hospitals we serve doesn't work for John Peter Smith is one of the hospitals they do. So we kind of added their community hospital to what they've been doing across the rest of the state. And it's been a big help from us. One of the things in Waco, Texas, we don't get a lot of people that move from Waco to go to work just for parachute fights. When it was there, they usually move to Waco for some other reason, and we pick them up. And we've been able to grow our staff and recruit people with a little bit more of a national name. For those of you who know who Deborah Whitley, she's still with us as well. Most of us are still there, still doing the same thing. I like to try to give everybody a little perspective on what's going on with all those dots in the map of the community hospital business in Texas. Talk about your hospital financial condition, how your results compare with previous years and other hospitals, some peer data and future issues. And we've got some information on the nursing home in here as well. And you know, what's going on in the community hospital business is hard times. In the last 12 or 15 months, the hospital in Atlanta gave up its independence and merged in with Scott and White. Hospital Taylor merged in with Scott and White. Hospital in Bastrop, Texas failed. Hospital in Bridgeport has got to fail any day. Somebody told me the hospital in Anson is closing. I don't know that Anson's anywhere nearby, but they're struggling. Pardon?
Anson?
Anson.
North of Abilene.
Yeah, north of Abilene. And let's see, there was one other that went under in the last year. So, the hospital in Smithville, Texas, which has always been, it's east of Austin a little bit, has always done pretty well. It's felt the pressures over the last few years and has merged in with the Seton Hospital there in Austin. And, you know, when I bring that report, the first thing people say is, well, you know, it looks like people either going out of business or merging with other hospitals. Well, there's another 200 hospitals here, community hospitals in Texas, that are still here, still going. And the problem with seeking large hospital partners is they won't make a long-term commitment to acute care in your community. That, you know, they'll say, we'll see how it goes. But if you don't generate the cash flow support acute care or critical access hospital, then they don't have extra money to keep pumping in your community. They're in this for business reasons. And we've seen them like in North of Waco and a couple of others, Burleson, Texas, Caldwell, Texas. We'll see them get acquired, operate for 2 or 3 years, and then basically get turned into an outpatient clinic. So, you know, the bad news is, my end slide kind of says this, but nobody cares about your money in your hospital the way people do that are based in your community. So to keep it going, long run, you really have to make it go on your own. But it's tough times out there. And there's a lot of, in the 20 years I've been doing this, there's more uncertainty than I've ever seen. A lot of the pieces of reimbursement are moving. And the state does, for Medicaid, the state doesn't really know. They have a very $30 billion program over a 5-year period. And they've been having meetings to talk to hospitals about how this program is going to work. And the meetings result in, that's a good question. Oh, that's a good, well, yeah, well, that's a good question. We'll get back to you. So the state has not been very well prepared. For what it's worth, cost reports this year have been delayed 1 to 3 months because the Center for Medicaid and Medicaid Services didn't release the forms. Just like April 15th getting here and not having the forms for doing your tax return. So, you know, that doesn't really matter to you guys a lot, but it's just, that's a good indication about how crazy everything is. Your hospital financial condition is improved. One of the things that we'll talk about is your auditor's opinion. Over in the grad form. Your auditor's opinion is, had comments about going concern, and we feel that, you guys have had a good improvement in operating results from 2010 to 2011. You've seen some improvements there. Your revenues are growing and your expenses are under control, and that's a recipe, if you can keep that going, for a better future. That notwithstanding, your accounts payable were up a good bit at the end of the year, and really driven because your accounts receivable went up. So it looks to me like you guys are, generating some income, but the problem is you can't get it in the bank because it's caught up in your accounts receivable. When we look at the year, it's causing you some cash pressures. Future issues, we'll have something to talk to you about, and I'm glad to talk about any of those that you don't want to bring up. In CPA code word, your net assets increased. In common sense terms, that would be your net income. $1,451,000 in 2011 and $139,000 in 2010. So, in my mind, 2010 is about break even. 2011 had a substantial increase in your bottom line. You've got some non-operating revenues that have driven that up. They're real money. They're not subject, I think, to any collection issues, but they're volatile. That's the biggest problem hospitals have right now, is they're getting away from being funded by seeing patients, and they're in these volatile programs like the UPL program, which is going to turn into what's called the waiver program, or Medicaid Dispro, or other things. Those numbers help, but the state in a whim can take them away. So in my mind, it's better to keep growing your core operation and you control your expenses, which you did a pretty good job in 2011. Oops. Board communication. Errors and irregularities in legal acts. We don't have any to report to you. We've got a number of comments on internal control we'll talk about in a slide or two. In some ways I kind of get a sense in Texas the recession is easing up. I don't really know about here. You go along I-20 or down I-35 and both residential and commercial real estate is selling again. I mean, if you get anywhere where there's oil, it's crazy. You can't get a hotel room within 50 miles of Carrizo Springs. If you don't know where that is, I'm sorry for you. But they found gas in the area, and they formed a new hospital district down there. First year their property tax business or basis was $1 billion. Year 2 was $2 billion. So, and those guys have been really broke for a long, long time, and I'm glad for them. And the administrator wants to take credit. He knew it was coming. If you knew it was coming, you've been buying up leases. So anyway, but it has been a tough time period. And we've seen misappropriation increase in hospitals, and it's crazy stuff that every time you think you got it all nailed down, we have a little larger facility. The dietary director started taking a deposit every week, and it showed up at the end of the year. When we got all the end of the year totals, it was, gosh, where did the dietary revenue go or the cafeteria revenue go? And well, they deposited Monday through Thursday, and Friday they didn't. So, you know, those things are aggravating when they occur in that place. It was not an entity-threatening event. You know, what you need to be concerned about in a place like yours is making sure the money that comes in, the electronic money, it's not so much cash over the window, but it's electronic deposits or checks in the mail. And those are separated from people that have access to your accounts receivable system and can make changes to it. So, you know, you want those deposits to get photographed, deposit made up, sent to the bank, check copies or remittances or what go forward into the system, and that gives you a lot of protection going forward. You know, auditor responsibility, both pieces of paper in here, the audit opinion is the one that truly belongs to us. You know, that it says when you read your financial statements, you're supposed to get a fair picture of what you own, what you owe, and what you made from one year to the other. Your accounting policies, the AICPA is obsessed that we're supposed to tell every board about accounting policies. I would commend them to you. They're footnote 1. Start reading about 9:45 when you're ready to go to bed. I'll send you right down. That they're important, but what importance is they're appropriate. They recognize revenue on a reasonable basis, like most community hospitals. They capture and amortize expenses the way that you would expect. Management runs the hospital. Good results are theirs, not ours. We're just the reporter. I always say that in places that have had a good year, because when bad results come up, they are not mine. They belong to the hospital as well. From our perspective, we didn't have any disagreements. We really didn't have any major audit issues. We'll talk about adjustments here in a second. You know, about the only comment I had from the audit process is, you know, we would prefer to be here in January. It seems like we're typically here in February. This year, we're here in March. You're one of the hospitals whose cost report has been delayed, or you're caught up in the delay with everybody else. And so, you know, what would normally be done sooner is got us into March. We think it's hard to get to a hospital with a September year end at Christmas time and work up the board meetings, but we think for September 30, our target would be a January board meeting. Adjustments. We had a wide variety of adjustments, and what would I tell you about them more than anything else is, you know, all of these here are typical end of the year adjustments, and typically not those that affect your cash or bank accounts. You know, that some hospitals wait to the end of the year, some hospitals book things, you know, prior to the audit. Accounts payable is, we did have some payables adjustments, and that gets to be, you know, money that will affect you shortly after the end of the year. Then accounts receivable and related allowances are really kind of the other side of your cost report of settlement. So most of these entries are typical end of the year accrual type entries. You know, what's important, I guess, from a board perspective is, you know, when we look at our internal financial statements, do we get an appropriate picture that matches up with the audit has told us? And, you know, I think by and large that you've been able to do that. And our audit includes the hospital and nursing home all bundled together, but we'll talk about some of the pieces a little bit. Okay, so what do we see here? If you want to follow me in the yellow covered report on the page between page 6 and page 7 is the assets, and page 7 is liabilities and equity. The reason they have that kind of odd number is the final bound report, they open up side by side. Let me tell you about your assets. While you had an improved year, your results are sitting here in accounts receivable right above my pointer. Your receivables went from $1 million to $1,537,000. Your cash came down $300,000. So, I guess the good news is that your cash didn't go down $500,000 that's tied up in receivables. You've collected some of those, but it's important that those continue to collect after the end of the year. In a fashion that they've collected previously. There's a $266,000 due from third-party payers. That's your cost report settlement on the asset side. And that means after you file your cost report, somewhere 60 to 90 days afterwards, that money is supposed to come in related to that. And you've invested net of depreciation $1.1 million in your facility. And if we go look on the liability side, $435,000 increase in long-term debt, $554,000 increase in current maturities of long-term debt. So your debt's gone up $1 million. And when we think about that investment, I'm going to come over here and look at your depreciation, which is $622,000, and see if I can go back and make some sense out of all this. So, $1.1 million is how much assets went up after we took depreciation out. When we add that depreciation to it, that really means they went up nearly $1.8 million. So $1.8 million went into your capital assets. How much was paid for through debt, I guess in one way or the other, is the $1 million we talked about, current maturities of long-term debt and your long-term debt. So, a good part of your cash, even though some tied up in accounts receivable, has gone into your building and, gone into your physical plant, fixed assets. Accounts payable came down $539,000. That's good as well. And again, that's money that would otherwise be sitting in your bank account. Though I'll tell you, at the end of the year, $715,000 is still a high number. There's no right number, but probably for your size facility, $500,000 would be a reasonable target. So you made a lot of progress towards that. All right, combined entity-wide income statement has 2 or 3 stopping points I want to look at. At the very bottom measure, the increase and decrease in unrestricted net assets. Isn't that a mouthful? Last year was $139,000, and I've gone on to page 7 now. And, I'm sorry, page 8. This year was $1,451,000. So, it's $1.3 million improvement in what's from one year to the next. If we go, here's a very positive development. Your net revenues went from $9,300,000 to $10,200,000. Now, $500,000 of that is in other revenue, but your patient revenues went up about $400,000. Not a big percentage, but we realize a lot of places are struggling with shrinking patient revenues, and even in a cost-based hospital, that can hurt you. That something's going on. You're seeing more patients in your community, and your mission is bigger than nothing else. Your operating expenses. Salary and wages went from $4,700,000 to $4,300,000. That's a pretty good change, even though your revenues were growing, those expenses were going down. Purchase services went from $2,000,008 to $2,006,000. Overall your expenses went from $10,652,000 to $10,457,000. So, expense control is going on here. You guys are growing your revenues, controlling your expenses. That means you still had an operating loss of $236,000, but that was versus $1,347,000, so $1.1 million increase. That's good. If being an auditor, I can always find the other side of the coin. Of that million, let's see, of that 1.1 million, my only concern is $500,000 is sitting in uncollected accounts receivable. So that all's collected and collects the way that it's been booked, then you ought to be able to see, you ought to feel good about where you are. You ought to be, even if a dime of that didn't come in, you still ought to feel good about where you've gone operationally. It's been good development. I'm going to skip my statement of cash flows and go to this picture. And I think this is maybe a little accurate, better way, gives you a better visual of what's going on. And this graph is not in, it's taken from the audit information, but the picture is not in there. This blue line is your cash minus your accounts payable. And you can see that, last year you were negative 700,000 nearly. You've moved to minus 400,000. You've had a significant improvement. You can't just look at your bank account and say, hey, we have more cash. Are we better off? Because hospitals are famous for financing their bank account by slowing down paying their bills. So you have to look at that relationship between accounts payable and cash. That's what this slide does. It says, hey, that relationship improved. This red line is your cash and savings accounts minus all of your current liabilities. Again, it improved. So, and really, it's the best we've seen in the last 4 years. If there's a negative side to this, is they're still negative. We still have more owed in payables than we have in the bank. How do we stay in business? Well, we keep rolling our accounts receivable into it. If that 500,000 receivables would come in and everything else being equal, it would get you to about an even standpoint. So, is there room for improvement? Yeah. Have you improved? Yeah. Days cash on hand is there's really not investment bankers anymore, at least not in Texas. They've all disappeared since 2008. They used to say 90 to 120 days was a good target for days cash on hand. Your hospital's down here at about 20 days. It's, 2010, 2011 are about the same, but better than the previous 2 years. There's a gap here between this yellow line is critical access hospitals. This green line is hospital districts in Texas, and you're kind of in both of those. And, they look a lot better than you guys do from a cash standpoint. So what's going on? What's going on is places like Carrizo Springs with their $2 billion tax base and their big increase in their cash. Iran, Texas built a new hospital a few years ago, and they've got a $3 billion property tax base with about 600 people in the district. So, and 90% of those taxes are paid by all companies from Houston. So, and I don't know if anybody's been anywhere near the Midland area, but that whole area is just really booming. There's lots of economic activity and lots of property tax activity. So those with significant mineral resources in their tax base have been able to, they just keep their taxes going up to balance the budget, and it keeps all the cash on their hands. Wind farms are a good thing. Except they want tax abatements, it seems like, whenever they show up. But, they've been, showing up in a few places. And I've never been a big proponent of wind power, but I think some of you know I'm a pilot. If I fly over, all I have to do is fly over Abilene, and when there's on the western side of that county, there's a windmill every 3 acres. I think maybe wind power works. I can hear them humming at 10,000 feet when the wind's blowing. So, but that's been good for some people.
We have dairies that they all have a favorite.
Evidently.
We could get along.
The dairy hospital districts don't seem to do as well. I mean, we work with Hereford, we work with Castro County. And Hereford is doing okay these days, but they're a bigger community, and, but, it's just not that, there are some other issues as well, that dairies tend to bring in uninsured workers a lot of time, or workers with low insurance, and so while it may help your tax base a little bit, they also pressure your uncompensated care. This is a pretty good illustration of where I've been going. That your accounts receivable have been pretty good. You're the red line there. Repair data is the green line. People around 60 days net. You're up to 90 days. You need that number to come back down. And you need to come back down by going in the bank, not by writing it off. I've learned over the years. I've told people that story before, and I came back next year, and their receivables were down to 30 days, and they had a really terrible year. And they said, you said if our receivables came down, it would be better. I said, well, yeah, I assumed you were going to collect them rather than write them off. You can see the impact on what goes on as your accounts payable go up as well. If I have board members, I speak at Texas Hospital Trustees and some other places, and board members say, tell us what to look at. There's so many buzzwords and so much information. How do we make sense out of all this, given we're volunteers, and there's lots of measures and lots of interaction hospitals, but a pretty good rule of thumb is if your accounts payable keep going up and you're reporting a positive income, something is disconnected and that you need to be thinking about. Well, in 2011, our payables are up. We had a positive net income. We know where the money is in those payables is sitting in accounts receivable. But in my mind, watching the balance of your payables and watching the balance of your receivables is the focus point over the next year. And I would expect really both of those numbers to come down eventually. Okay. Well, that was all the good news stuff on the income statement. I mean, there really was a market improvement in what's going on. But again, being an auditor, I like to try to think about what the alternatives are. And we've taken pieces of your income statement here, and I'm just going to talk about the top part of it. But this net margin from patient operations, your net patient revenues, your revenues minus your bad debts, contractual adjustments, minus your operating expenses outside of depreciation and other items. When we just take those two together and subtract them, you've seen a shift in 2010 and 2011. About $1.3 million loss versus a $700,000, $800,000 loss. So, the underlying patient revenues minus patient expenses has softened up like a lot. How do we make things work? Well, we make things work with your funding programs compared to 3 years ago, $400,000 versus $224,000. Where's your property taxes over here? Taxes are up that are allocated here. So, we made some progress there. And then, we've got the nursing home has been positive for the last couple of years now. So, there are some pieces of the puzzle making it work. And, my concern is we come back up here to this number. And, these numbers seem to change on a legislative win. The real cash, everybody makes use or more significant use of those things. You need to be in those programs. If you want long-term stability, it really comes from working up here. And I'll tell you that you can't expense control yourself to long-term success. Doesn't mean you ought to be spending money hand over fist. The inflation's going on out there, no matter what the federal government says. And and in medical businesses, it's even higher. So, you gotta make this number net patient revenues before funding programs needs to be the first one. things you can do to try to attack it. We'll talk about those towards the end of the presentation. Nursing home, you know, I've had comments on the nursing home that I probably have to eat some crow on. It's doing okay now, and it's a great community asset. It's a modern facility. I'm glad for you guys. I'm glad to see it. You know, you gotta watch your patient revenues like a hawk. Probably out of 100 hospitals, probably 30 of them have nursing homes associated with them. And what I'll see is some event will occur and we'll lose 20% of our nursing home patients. Variety of reasons. Bottom line, that nursing home goes away, and whatever you've made gets eaten up in a couple of years. Now, if we look back in time, you guys are operating that nursing home so much more effectively. I mean, your lighting is better, and you know, I'm glad to see you doing it. You know, I guess what I would tell you is you know, it is you know, you got to keep the patients in there, and it's tough from an expense control standpoint. You know, the for-profit hospital, the for-profit nursing homes balance their numbers on the backs of the employees. I mean, these temporary employees, they have virtually no benefits, they do lots and lots of things because they have a lot of revenue pressures. And so it's a tough business. And the fact that you guys have been able to do those numbers in a tough business is pretty impressive. One of the reasons I fretted about it is most people can't do that. So, you know, 2 years is not a trend make. Give me one more data point and you'll have me completely sold. But 2 years of improved operations is you know, a good thing. Cost report we talked about. You know, you'll see some cash come in this summer related to it. Hopefully at a time when it will really help you. I'm going to switch over to some other items now, just kind of some perspective. Turn off my pointer. Okay, this blue line is personnel expense. This blue line with red, and this is for the hospital, with red boxes is general administrative expenses. There's an obvious downward trend to both of those. And, you know, cost control within certain bounds works in critical access hospitals. People have a little trouble grasping that, but it does. And you know, you guys are, and there's no reason to operate inefficiently. You guys are operating efficiently. You know, why aren't you making a whole bunch more money? Well, your contractuals and bad debts eat up everything that you've been able to gain. You know, what's happening out there is Medicare, Medicaid continue to pay less and less. And that it's a transfer of federally and state mandated programs to your local taxpayers. There's no other place to balance the budget, you know, either other than get rid of employees and eventually you get down to a minimum number. You can't go, you know, you have regulatory requirements. And it becomes the local taxpayers that have to pick that up. And I'm not telling you it's fair, and I'm not trying to make it or unfair or make a political statement. I'm just telling you that's what's happening. So those programs continue to cut reimbursement back, and to stay in business, it takes more local support. Oops. This slide is an interesting slide. Because I'm a CPA, I guess. And the trouble is, my staffer put it together, should have used some different colors, but the top line here is your outpatient revenue in the hospital. And the bottom line here is your inpatient revenue. And in most hospitals, in about 2004, those numbers started diverging and have never again come together. You'll see 70% outpatient or more in most hospitals, community hospitals, and 30% inpatient. And that's what drove hospitals in the mid-2000s to convert to critical access, because outpatient doesn't pay what you need. that it's lower on a per encounter basis. It has a higher variable cost component, and it comes in smaller lumps. That, you know, it's about a 20 to 30 to 1 ratio of one inpatient discharge, what you get paid for what you get paid for one outpatient encounter. But you guys have reversed that trend, I guess, kind of to my amazement. I can't think of anybody I've seen that has done that. You guys have always been a marginal case for being a critical access hospital. It's helped you, but because it's cost-based, and believe me, if your volumes go down or your outpatient revenues go way up, you know, you have to be paid on your cost because you can't make it on those patient revenues. And you know, I'm certainly not telling you to abandon critical access, but I'm telling you that's something that we need to continue to monitor. That it's better to be a growing PPS, that's a fee-for-service hospital. It's better to be a growing PPS hospital than it is a stagnant critical access hospital. You know? So the jury's out as far as all that goes, but it's an interesting development here for you guys. You know, a couple years of trend, and it'd probably be more than interesting. Patient days are down a little bit. I don't know if that makes a big difference. You know, what your discharges are down a good bit from 2008 to 2011. And so, even though your inpatient revenues have gone up, that they are you know, discharges are the primary trigger for how you get paid, and you're off a good bit. You know, I don't know off the top of my head, David, what your per discharge is, $4,000 per discharge. And well, I suspect it's $3,000 or $4,000 a discharge. So if you're looking at 400 discharges versus 900, 500 discharges at $4,000 a piece become a pretty big number. And you have a lot of fixed costs when it becomes inpatient. The extra inpatient costs you some supplies, and maybe if you're really busy, it might cost you some overtime. But and you'll have some contractual deductions, but a lot of that inpatient goes to the bottom line in a PPS hospital. For critical access hospitals, it's just really hard to illustrate. But the more income you generate hospital-wise, the less reimbursement you get. And that's why I'm interested in how those lines have moved. If you're a regular business, if you generate more income on your own, it sticks with you. But you guys are swapping those around a little bit. But if you're able to continue growing your hospital, there comes a point where you can say, hey, you know, being a regular hospital versus critical access is economically better. It's so much economically better that we think we ought to change because we think it's going to stay that way. How will it stay that way? Lots of factors. Physician community, patients, and insurance payers are the big things that go in that. So I don't have any answers on those. It's premature to draw any conclusions. But, you know, keep growing your hospital. I think it's, you know, it's good for nothing else, but if you're treating more patients and serving more people in your community. This is a pretty good example of volume and fixed cost in hospitals. This red line is your expense per adjusted patient day. And in the official accounting language, it's off the Richter scale from 2010 to 2011. And you got to say, well, didn't this guy just tell me we cut our operating expenses? How can that be? Well, it can be because your discharges went down a lot more than your operating expenses did. And so that's why I say if you grow your inpatient business, the opposite happens. Those expenses stay about the same. And, you know, if those discharges go up, your expense per discharge comes down a good bit. I don't know what to tell you about this graph. It's supposed to, the dotted line is supposed to slant up from right to left. Have a positive slope. My kids are out of high school, so I forgot my geometry. It's supposed to have a positive slope. And the red line is supposed to be below the positive slope. And that's why lots of hospitals are sick. that their revenues, that red line is their net revenues, their revenues are below their long-term revenue trends. So the revenues are flat, their expenses are growing, and it makes a bad recipe. You know, you guys are doing something right. Your revenues are growing and they're better than the long-term trend. You know, I don't think it provides any answers other than it tells me that there's a market and support for your hospital and your community. I mean, I think you guys already know that, but you know, to me, that's kind of a vote of confidence, even though I'm not sure what the economic significance is that, you know, you're doing something that few other critical access community hospitals are doing, is you're growing your revenues. From an expense standpoint, this shows your 2011 is the personnel-related expense, except for physicians for the hospital, as a percent of net patient revenues. 2010 is the blue line, hospital districts, the green line, and the red line is critical access hospitals. So you've got a little better personnel cost structure than the average hospital in Texas. Again, in a cost-based hospital, that's not necessarily an advantage, but if you can keep growing your hospital and you keep your cost advantage, then eventually some of that can stick to you. Your other general administrative expenses versus personnel, you know, are higher. And some of it is you're just in an old facility with lots of operating expenses compared to new modern facilities. That between 2000 and 2008, our little community hospitals spent $750 million building and improving hospitals. And, you know, some of them it worked out good, some of them it didn't. But I will tell you, there's a definite build it and they will come. People that build new hospitals will see, usually year 2 and year 3, a 10 to 20% increase in revenues. That it just new, cleaner facility seems to work some. And they're also more energy efficient and they have a lot of other things going on. Right now, I don't think that's anywhere in your immediate future. Doing some of the things you guys consider with your physicians and your clinic and trying to expand access to your hospital, to me, seems to be the focus. But, you have some operating penalties that come out of your building. What's significant here, your tax subsidy is in this block. You know, we look at it different than taxpayers do. They look at 6 cents per hundred on their hospital, on their houses. You know, we look at it as percent of patient revenues. You know, it's about the same from 2010, 2011. Marginally, you're a little less tax dependent than the average critical access hospital. You're more tax dependent than the average hospital district, but they're bigger facilities in there. I've got Midland Hospital District, Nacogdoches, and some other big places, and they just have some economies of scale. So, compared to the average critical access hospital, everything in, you guys actually have a really good year compared to the median values out there. So, and that's compared to the previous year when you were not nearly as strong. So I know it's a daily struggle with cash and it's hard to hear those things, you know, and believe them, but I mean, the statistics point to some positive developments. The 2 slides after this actually combine some of these. Deductions from revenue, your contractuals and charity and indigent care, they're better in 2011 as a percent, about even with the average critical access hospital. Can't take a lot away from that. Your uncompensated care is up. It's, you know, 14% versus 12% of the average critical access hospital. It's a problem. You don't get paid for your uncompensated care by critical access program. That's what your tax revenues and other things fund. So, you know, that hurts you, and it takes reimbursement away. You know, it's a tough thing to deal with. If we'll go back over time, I think it was the hospitals in Houston in the mid-90s got really good at a couple of things. Is they got really good at sending their charity patients to other places. Some of the large nonprofits, wanted they get those charity patients and make it hard to get in there, and they send them down to Harrison County Hospital District or someplace like that. The state passed a law requiring certain minimum amounts of charity care. And one of the ways they were diverting them was they'd run them out of the emergency room, and so the state passed the Intella law. But I couldn't even tell you what the abbreviation means anymore, but it means you don't want to send away a sick patient from your emergency room because you get in trouble for it. Really, I think a lot of people overreact to that. You have to triage your patients, decide if they're emergently ill, treat them if they are, if they're not, you treat them and get around to them. But all of a sudden, things are starting to go on with that Medicaid is going to have a 40% deduction in their payment for an ER patient if they're not emergently ill. So I don't know how you balance that with Intella, but I sure as heck want to be trying to, triaging them pretty hard. And that's a real sea change it's a common sense thing. If people aren't sick, hospitals don't need to be treating them. That's a high cost care setting. They need to live through it and take aspirin in the evening and go to the clinic in the morning or something like that. And, the state and federal government have kind of said, we don't care, but all of a sudden, they got budget pressures and so they're looking at that. But uncompensated care hurts you. It's part of your mission. There's some for-profit outfits that have rolled up some little critical access hospitals. And some of them, I think they've saved them. And they saved them when they couldn't govern themselves real well. And when I asked them how they do it, they said, well, our formula is really easy. We maximize our Medicare patients because we get paid cost on those. So we seek to have the most Medicare patients we can. We seek to drive away, they didn't use drive away, but we seek to minimize our uncompensated care and get them to go down the road. Well, that's hard in a hospital with community mission. You're kind of the down the road. But if you hear places doing better or the for-profits have got all the things figured out, well, it's because they're down the road. Really, getting those patients registered for Medicaid or doing other things to get them paid is really what you need to do. Or get them into clinics rather than in hospital care. What does this slide tell us? This is your FTEs for adjusted average daily census. This red line is now at the bottom is yours. It's been going up and up. So does that mean you got too many people? No, it's been going up because your volumes have been coming down. Your employment has been pretty static. There are hospitals that operate with less people than you do, but they're not $10 million in patient revenues. Rankin County, I think, has 37 employees. I've been in that building and there are 2 human beings in the building, and you kind of wonder why they bother to have a hospital there. You guys have got a presence. You're paid. In my mind, as we watch these FTE numbers come up, they're just really, out in the median value range. Tells me that you're operating your hospital pretty efficiently. You can't, growing your revenues will solve that problem. It's not reducing your FTE count that's clearly working. There's newspaper here, press, just TV people. Okay. I usually at this slide, I have to always turn it about the newspaper and say, okay, the auditor did not say we need to reduce personnel. So if I'm on TV, then I'm not telling you that. I like the newspaper because I always am interested in what I said that, or they thought that I said when I get to the next day. And the areas thing I had up in one place is, mean I don't have opinions that when I kind of think about how a place is run or whatever. And I'll be darned if the newspaper didn't write what I've been thinking rather than what I said. And I don't know how that happened. And I'm usually a guy who tells you what I'm, tells you what's on my mind. But anyway, so where do we go? Positive things are happening in your income statement. You're invested in your hospital, you're paying some of it out of your pocket. That's one of the reasons you're pressured on your cash. Your accounts receivable need to quit going up, and when those come down, they need to pay down your accounts payable. Okay? In about an hour's worth of discussion, I'm sorry I've taken so long to say that, but that's kind of how we got from A to B. If we want to switch over to control letter comments, where do we go here? We're over in the green sheets now. And the audit came together. We think we're done. We think we have the right numbers in the financial statements. But it came together in a fashion we didn't have time to finish the bound copy to bring it with us. We'll send that to David and the staff next week and get it over with. So if you're wondering why we had these green and gold things, it's an honor. I'm a Baylor graduate. This is an honor of the Baylor Lady Bears. Again, the national championship. Maybe. But if you ever see their coach on TV, and her kids go to my kid's high school, man, she really looks tired this time of year. I'm not sure whether it's worth it to win it or not, but I think they may be there. What do we have here? Accounts receivable credit balances is the bane of my existence. In theory, you're supposed to take those credit balances, figure out who they belong to, and send it back. I promise you, 98 times out of 100, nobody has overpaid you. What's happened is you got a mismatch with payment and a guarantor, the way computer systems work. And so, what really needs to happen is the credit balances need to be researched and applied to the proper account payable. They're a little bit of a shot. Segregation of duties. You staff efficiently, that always triggers segregation of duties. If you listen to your auditor, well, if you had 3 more people in your accounting loop, business office loop, then you probably wouldn't have a segregation of duties comment. I don't know what that costs, but a lot of money. People say, well, you put this in here every year. Why do you keep doing it? We're here to tell you that that's a decision, a business decision that I would agree with in your situation. But it exposes you to risk, and I'm not here to underwrite that risk. We test for things. We're supposed to look for those things, but there's a zillion transactions in the year, and we'll turn them up if they're there, but sometimes it takes a while. So what do? Do we go hire people? The answer is no. The answer is make sure you've got effective segregation of duties on receipts processing. That's important. It doesn't take extra people. And make sure we've got a crime policy or a blanket bond in there to cover misappropriation. And those two things, in my mind, are reasonable. You've got a control system in place. It's appropriate. It looks like most community hospitals. You're not oblivious to how a business ought to run, but you're just pretty thinly staffed. So let's worry about receipts processing. Let's try to cover some of it with some insurance. And those policies are usually cheap. They're a lot cheaper than hiring a person. A lot of audit adjustments. Not so much the overall dollar volume. It's just, there's a number of them that it would be nice if you guys get your finances where they take less day-to-day attention to getting the bills paid and more attention to counting. It'd be nice to have a lesser number of audit adjustments. I'm not seeing anything here that I don't see in other places. As I talked about, most of them are typically end-of-year adjustments. So I think your accounting is reasonable for where we go. Okay, so improvement. But where do we go to the future? I have 2 slides, and then I will leave you alone. Somehow when I cut and pasted this column of numbers, I got nothing but the numbers. But this is 22 hospital list of what the new Medicaid payment rates are gonna do versus how you would be paid if you were paid on your Medicaid costs. And you can see that brackets are bad, and you can see that almost all of them are bracketed, that group, at an average decrease of more than $300,000. You know, they lied to us, for lack of a better word. They said, we want to change Medicaid to an encounter basis so that, you know, if you see a patient, you're going to get a fee for seeing them. And we're going to make that fee such that, you know, it'd be like your cost were. Because we want to get away from cost-based reimbursement, but we want to give you an even start, and they didn't do it. And, you know, for the last 4 months, they said, oh, well, it is what it is, you got to live with it. And about 2 weeks ago, they said, well, it is what it is, but we really hadn't thought about it in this context. And it's the first time they blinked. So there may be some help coming there. It's not a huge number, but it would be, you know, the right direction. But this is what the hospitals are up against out there, guys. Every time you turn around, oh yeah, it's okay. And then you know, get out the calculator, well, it's okay for somebody, but it's not okay for the little hospitals. And I mean, they hurt you. You know, you've taken control of your operating results. To me, that's the good thing. You know, your expenses are under control, your revenues have moved up some, and you know that I've seen people just kind of give up the ghost on doing that. So you know, positive statement, positive step in the right direction. You know, you're like everybody else, you're relying on these funding programs. They're good, but they're volatile. You know, you got to figure out how to maximize what you get out of them. But in the long run, you're better off trying to be the captain of your own fate. But this fourth bullet is what I told you earlier. There's no bailout. If you guys don't take care of your hospital, then there's nobody going to work to keep a hospital here besides y'all. And you know, that's tough, but that's the way it is. You know, and once we're done with the audit and cost report, we can do some things. We need current statistics, but you know, to help put together a profit improvement program, and we really just have to attack everything. I listen to you guys talking about your insurance. I know it's a tough deal, and it's tough for the employees as well. You know, what we really need to do is to attack some other things so we've got a little more breathing room for the employees. But, you know, let's look at the factors that affect critical access reimbursement, you know, and what can we do to drive those up? What can we do to, you know, look for patients that, you know, how can we get patients, you know, that are in programs that pay us for what we need? And, you know, one of the things, we rely on a lot of peer data. I can't always tell you what to do, but I can tell you, okay, here's the median value, here's the 75th percentile, and here's where your hospital falls. So you need to go think about the drivers that put you different from those hospitals and see if you can do stuff with them. I mean, you can't. There are things you can and you can't do. But, you know, we can help you point out strategies we've seen in other places at work, and places that maybe you can go look internally. So this is about as long-winded as I think I've ever been. I don't know if it's too much information and not enough time, but it's, you know, I just, you know, I have a positive sense of the direction you're going. You know, I'm glad to see your nursing home is not draining you down, and that, you know, that in the long run, I just have to tell you, I have a hospital bias. The hospital is a bigger employer, it's a bigger economic engine. It's a place that if it doesn't go, the rest of the community doesn't go well. But, you know, your results are moving the right direction. So I'm glad for you. I don't know if y'all are employees or citizens, or whether you're either one of those. You know, that's a positive message as well. I'm done.
Michael, are you removing the ongoing concern?
That's our plan. That's our plan. You know, run a business between now and the time we get the report out. You know, if you, I mean, you ultimately, and I think about this, right, David? I mean, you guys have invested a good bit of your internal capital in fixed asset projects. I mean, and I don't know where else you go other than your own pocket to do that. If you hadn't done that, you'd have a lot more money in the bank. And, you know, and that's, in my mind, that's discretionary spending, and so I can get happy with where we've gone cash-wise. And, you know, we're on a quick update on your payables and receivables as of the end, really, I guess, at the end of March, since we're there. But as long as those stay balanced, then I think we're good and good. So, I don't know, you know, I should tell you this, and I can't, and I'll write back to David and let you know, that going concern's been there for 3+ years or more. Certainly was back here in the Ray Meadows days. Mason, I'm sorry. Ray Meadows is a county commissioner, retired county commissioner in Waco, Texas. So, Ray's in Ray's day. So, you know, again, good things are happening. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a struggle. The external factors are against you. You got to make it on your own. And it's one step at a time. Kind of feeling. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Questions? You're new.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm just kind of going over faces that, too much information, not enough time, or are there some things that helped, or?
Oh, yeah, it helped. Still a lot of stuff there that I really don't want to ask. And that's just what it is.
Well, it is.
I'm not an accountant.
Well, cost-based critical access hospitals don't operate the way common sense businesses do. But, you know, don't spend money you don't need to spend, and getting extra patients works in every situation. So, and, you know, the nursing home, just got to make sure that pipeline stays full of patients. Where your nursing home is, if it stays full, it's just going to do good. You know, if it loses 10, they'll lose $200,000 in a year sometimes. You can't, you know, it takes a while to get that built up. But, you know, this is probably the best report I've known in, to be quite honest. Not out of the woods, but good results are there. So, anyway, I'm going to pack up and go back towards Waco. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it. I just want to say, I've been here coming in 6 years, and it's wonderful to hear that good report. And I'm finally learning a little bit what he's talking about. I do want to have a quick reception, if y'all don't mind. Return to our meeting. Next on the agenda is the bylaws review committee update. Actually, we have not got together. It's been a pretty busy month, but I would like to encourage each board member, if you have a suggestion to go over the bylaws, would you write it up and give it to Heather, and that way we can present it to the attorney? You do have the bylaws. No. Do you have a copy of the bylaws?
It should have been in your folder.
No.
Okay, well, I can get you one. Sorry.
You need one.
Too bad.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And just any time, you can do that. All right. We need to approve the minutes of the previous meetings. Is there any?
Correction?
Yes.
Notice there's a formatting error right here, you never change on page 10. I don't know what that was in my folder.
Oh, I noticed before, man.
So I'll change that.
Oh, okay.
But you don't have to formally do that.
May I have a motion to approve minutes?
I'm not going to approve them, as they are.
Second? Okay, made and seconded, and approve minutes as they are. All in favor?
This is not mine,
Okay.
this is Jack's. Here it is.
Financial and statistical reports and debt write-off.
Starting with page 14, we're showing our cash of $654,590. The hospital is $540,858, and Parkview is $113,732. Our net accounts receivable on page 17 for the hospital. And the difference, is increased by $81,338. And then our accounts payable has increased slightly by $71,411 over the last month's expenses. On page 21 and 23 are the checks that were written for the hospital. The cost of $393,433, $393,433.71 for the month. Page 43 is on Parkview. Our net accounts receivable decreased slightly by a little over $3,000, and the accounts payable are down by $16,999. Now, page 47 and 48 are the checks that were written for the month, and they paid out $95,684.
That's it, okay. Next, administrative report.
Okay, we had our yearly survey. I don't know if all the board members know that, but we had it two weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. Yeah, March 8th. And so, Marissa and Cassie, this is my assistant DON, in case you don't know, and my director of nursing, and we're going to talk about that, in case you're interested in how our survey went. So, because we've been spending a lot of time getting prepared for it. First of all, we had, there's two surveys when they come. There's the regular survey, and then there's a life safety survey. And the life safety survey is pretty much just a maintenance survey. And the guy came and he didn't find anything wrong with the building at all. Everything checked out great. And then when we got the life safety survey back, and it came back from Houston, he did find 2 small tags that they did tag us on, which is fine. When my office decided to flood out, when the sprinklers flooded out, there's a little box, and I'm sure you guys are aware of this, there's a little box with wrenches in it in case you need a wrench for the sprinkler system. Well, when my sprinkler system flooded out, they took that wrench out of that glass box to go fix my sprinkler system. Well, they never replaced that wrench, and you have to replace that wrench. So we got tagged on not replacing that wrench, which we replaced it the day that that guy was there. And then we have a generator, of course, that we have to have batteries for. And there's a new reg where you have to have, we have no maintenance-free batteries, where we don't have to count the electrolytes on our batteries. And they want us to have a battery where we open it up and we have to count the electrolytes on a weekly basis. They want you to have that. I've never heard of that. That's not something that we've ever done. It's something that they're starting to do. They want you to do the maintenance on the batteries. So we did go and get, it's like a car battery. We went to Clovis and got it. We put it in. They did tag us on not having a maintenance on our batteries. So it's 2 very small tags. We've already fixed them. They're fine with it. On our regular state survey, I'm very happy to say, and I think you guys are happy to say, that we got 4 tags, which is really good. Not that you want to get any tags. There was they're federal tags. They were very minor. There's a state survey tag connected onto that, so it looks like it's 5 tags, but it's only 4. And we'll go through all 4 of them, and I'll let my director of nursing, and you go through them. Do you want the list of them? Okay. There you go.
The first one we had was incontinent care of a resident, and it wasn't done in a timely manner. And so to resolve that, we added an aid to our night shift. It was in between the 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the morning round. So we've added some aids to our night shift. We've also implemented some of the nursing. We have additional nursing sometimes during the night so that they can monitor that more closely. We did that for the week after to make sure that things were getting done like they should. We did have a med aide working, who is also a certified nurse aide, and she was working with floor, so she wasn't really familiar with how they have their how they do their rounds and things like that while state was there, so that was part of the problem there. Our med room also had some expired meds in it, and we are now instituting weekly checks performed by me personally, which is also a duty that I had prior to having the position that I have now, and so I'm familiar with that. Also, we're incorporating some means to put labels on so that way the nurses know when those meds expire without really having to go hunt for those kind of dates. So we immediately cleaned up those expired meds and have since made sure that there are no more expired meds in our med room. We also had a resident that was 20 minutes late in her feeding time. She is totally dependent on the staff for her meals, and there's a 20-minute delay in feeding her. We immediately have instituted the charge nurse being responsible for that. Instead of, meal times is a very busy time. You know, at our facility, you've been there at a meal time, it's pretty hectic. So we instituted the charge nurses to be responsible for that care of that resident so that this doesn't happen.
Well, we have one person that eats in her room, and she's hospice care. And I feed her a couple times a week during lunchtime. But, you know, sometimes the charge nurse thinks that I'm in there feeding her, and sometimes I'm in a meeting. And so, you know, so sometimes we're late in feeding her. And she's hospice, and she doesn't eat all the time. And we were 20 minutes late in getting her lunch on time that day. And usually she doesn't even eat, and it's sad. And so we feed people in the assisted dining, but she's the only one we feed in the room. And so it's hard to judge that she gets fed before 12:30, and we're supposed to have her fed by 12:05. So what we've done is the charge nurse is the only one that doesn't feed in the assisted dining, and she's the only one that is at the nurse's station and can do it. She has to feed her by 12:05, and she's the one accountable for it. So that's our plan of correction, and it's been going really well in the last 2 weeks, because she's the only one that does it. I don't do it anymore just because we have one person in charge of doing it, and it's worked out well. Yeah. And that's it. That's it. And I guess our biggest one was the incontinence, and where we had to add an extra staff member. But I think that out of all of the minor ones that we had, the biggest one that we learned from was that we needed an extra staff person on the third shift, and we were glad to actually learn that, because if it wasn't for state coming in, they actually came in at 4 in the morning and surprised us. And Marissa and I got our behinds, you know, very early that morning there. And I guess, you know, you hear family complaints or whatever, that there's not enough people to change people on third shift. And you never believe it, because you think you have enough staff. But we actually saw it firsthand when we got there early that morning, and we were humbled. We were very humbled. And so we added another staff person, and I'm not saying everything's perfect, because nothing's ever perfect, but we were humbled, and I'm glad that happened, and we deserved that tag. And we feel pretty good about that we got that fixed, because family members were right that were complaining, and I think it was a good survey. So we learned a lot, and I think things are a lot better.
This survey is what they call your open
It's our annual survey.
book.
Yeah, yeah. And so there was about 7 people that had a lot of incontinence during third shift, and we learned who they were, and we learned how to take better care of them. So that was something that we're proud of, that's going to be better.
It's a better facility.
Yeah, it is. And that's my report. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess you heard the auditor speak of UPL dish and cost report money. We have not received anything at all since the first of the year. Actually, the first year being October. None of that money has come in, especially on the reports that you have in front of you. So we're down by quite a bit of money. Again, and not to be redundant, but we used to receive dish money of $350,000 a year. In talking with them this week, it looks like we are going to finally get something, but it's only going to be about $120,000, so they've cut us that much. The UPL program, it's the upper payment limit. It's a process where we actually invest money through Towards, which is our health organization, and they give us a good return. We've had that for several years. And they are completely doing away with that program. They're changing it, they're changing the name and everything. And what's going to happen is they still want us to be a part of that program. We still will invest money, but they're going to dictate what we spend it on. It's not going to be for us at our discretion for operations or anything else. They will not allow brick and mortar as an expense. So you can't invest that money and say you're going to build a clinic or a hospital or anything. They will not allow it. Now there is a way around that, and it's pretty technical, and we won't get into that. We can build the hospital, we can build the clinic first, and then get the money. But we can't do it to build. But there's a way around that. But that's down the road. What we saw, what we have seen, is no money coming in up to the end of February. We started receiving UPL money in March, and so that's helped us out a lot. We should have the dish money within 30 to 90 days. That's $120,000. Our cost report settlement, if you saw, I know he showed you a lot of stuff. It's going to be around $200,000 is what the cost report settlement is going to be. So we'll see that. He said sometime in the summer, and I gather that probably will be that extent. So we can see some recovery coming up in the next few months, but as Michael Oatman kept saying, we're not out of the woods. The government is still broke. They're going to be broke tomorrow. They're going to be broke several years from now. And they're going to cut the entitlement. And the entitlements have to do with Medicare and Medicaid. They probably get some sort of Social Security at some point in time. It's up to us to keep ourselves afloat. He kept saying that, and that's what we've been trying to do for the last 4 years. That's how long I've been here. And it's been a struggle, but it's been more of a struggle within the last, I'm going to say the last 7 months than it has been the other. And that's because the government, these cuts have just started. This is brand new. Last August, July and August, when we were going through the budget session, I don't know if you remember, but I informed you at that time that I felt like we were going to see cuts coming from the government, Medicaid and Medicare. And they immediately started right after the first of the year. Yesterday, at staff meeting, I called to the attention of the doctors, just to give you an example, where we used to bill one of our insurance companies $850, and they never paid the $850, but they would pay a large portion of that. They paid us $35, and that's all they're going to pay. And that's what we're going to start seeing from, and that's private insurance companies. We're going to see them following suit along with Medicare and Medicaid. So we're going to continue to see cuts. And the question that we have to ask ourselves the further we're going down the road is, how are we going to handle this? And that's something that I and the other department heads are going to have to get together and put our heads together and try to figure out. Because the government because of the mess they're in, they're not gonna change their mind. It's gotta be done. My opinion on the Obamacare that the Supreme Court is listening to at the present time is that they're gonna kill it. But that just means they'll go back to the drawing board. It doesn't mean it's over forever. They'll just go back, come back to something else. And in the meantime, they're gonna hammer us on our entitlements. And if we cannot fix the Medicare, Medicaid program, they're gonna continue to cut all hospitals, not just us. We just happen to be in the area where it hurts the most. And we're just gonna have to pull our bootstraps up and try to figure out how to get on down the road. We're hurting right now, as you can see in the books, we're hurting right now because we have not received the revenue that we're used to receiving. And we have had some extra expense because we've gone out and bought a new accounting system because the government forced us to. We didn't buy this new accounting system the last 12 months and spend $700,000 because we wanted it. We had it. And that's an added expense. We're still paying back some of the forgiveness. I say this every time, and I don't mean to be redundant, but I want to try to make you know where we're at. We're still paying $15,000 a month back to Trailblazer Medicare because of the forgiveness of the different things they covenant, and y'all, those that have been on board know what we still about have $100,000 that we owe them. The good part about that is if we get $200,000, in theory, I can turn around and pay that off. We wouldn't have that expense. But I'll have to see where we are financially before I say, yeah, I'm going to pay it back because we're paying it, so we may just pay it out and use the money in that area. Our facility is old. Walk up and down the halls and see that it is. It's hard to keep it up. Every day, Jerry's having to do something somewhere that something's falling apart or stopped up or whatever. And he's coming to me and I need $1.25 for this, or I need $1.25 for that. And then Bobby comes in and says, I need $1.25 so the computer stops. Yeah, it's tough, and that's just the truth. We're keeping our head above water. This month, we actually made 3 payrolls. We made payrolls in both places for the bar already. And so you'll understand, our payroll for both entities, and this is the payroll, not taxes, is $130,000 every 2 weeks. We have to have $130,000 cash every 2 weeks, or the people that work here, they don't get paid. And that's both entities now. Tax-wise, we have to have approximately $35,000 every 2 weeks. And those taxes, you will get penalized if you don't pay them. So we have to have that cash every 2 weeks. That's a lot of money just for payroll, which is, in any entity, your largest expense are the people who work. And that's just the way it goes. And we have some high dollar equipment that we have purchased. That's why we saw our assets go up. The new CT machine and a lot of equipment that we're getting in. The grant, we've already started drawing money down. We've drawn about $26,000 down of the grant money, and we've actually purchased a new EKG machine. Y'all have it? So we have a new EKG machine. Roy has a new fryer and steamer. I'm not a cook, what that does. Well, I know what a fryer does, but I don't know what a steamer. Actually, I haven't listened to trying to recall from memory. We have gotten a badge machine, and that's for human resource. And I don't, you probably don't go down, if you go down to the rooms, we have some new furniture in all the hospital rooms. We felt like we needed some updated from 1960 furniture down in that area. We do have some new computer equipment, and then the items I mentioned. So we've actually spent real close to $27,000. And right after the first, but they make this report every 30 days, so we're waiting to get that report. And next week we'll probably draw some more money down, and we have to pay for that immediately. They don't want, in fact, they asked us to report what interest we earned on that money and keep it, and we're not gonna do that. Our accounts payable is down a little bit, and he was trying to pick out some points. It's down a little bit. It's gonna be real hard to try to get our accounts payable down much in the next 12 months because of the cuts. Our revenue's not there, and we have to be let's just hope we don't come across some major problem like we did. If you remember last year, we lost the air conditioning just about this time last year. And we went all summer long without it, and cost us over $100,000 to get it up and running. So we've had some hard times, that's just the truth. Every one of these people out here know that, they sweated through the non-air conditioning. I've been the doctor's cussed a few times. But we got it fixed, we're still working on some minor repairs. It's not at 100%, but we're gonna get there, and we wait each day for Medicare to come in our doors. They can at any time, and they have over the rural health clinic just a few weeks ago, and we got tagged. I think we had, I can't remember, we had like 4 tags ourselves. Expired medication seems to be a big thing everywhere. They got us on that. But I told you about that already. That's just part of the game that you have to play when you're in this business. They can walk in the door at any time, and that's their job. And if they couldn't find something to hit you on, then they wouldn't have a job. So they'll keep their job. Anyway, things are good. You heard the audit. Yes, I wish they were better. Hopefully, when we start getting some of this money coming in, we'll see a better result from the financial statements. I don't know that we're going to have a good a year this year as we had last year because of what the government's doing to us. And if they continue to cut us, then we may not see it again. I think what we heard from the audit is that we had some good and we had some bad. And we've got to face both of them and try to work with both of them. But other than that, I just wanted to try to bring you up to speed on where we're at. You know, we don't try to hide anything from anybody. What it is, and that's what you see. So we struggle every day. We all come to work. And for the most part, we get along. So.
Thank you. I was here one day and I had Eileen to take me to see the new chairs and they're really nice, so y'all get an opportunity.
Which rooms, 42, does anybody remember what room?
I couldn't.
The two big rooms are 40 and 42.
I can take
Is that for the new chair? Well,
I don't know, they're in different places.
okay,
And they were real nice. And I found out something today I did not know. We have a little garden area, Lena's Garden.
Yeah, the
Money was donated by Marilyn Cox.
yeah.
And in memory of her mother, and I didn't even know that was there until I was shown it today, and I thought, oh, how neat. I even saw more space there where there could be some more plants. Plants, so.
You gotta remember, you put something in, somebody's gotta maintain it.
That's true.
She just volunteered.
We have,
Well,
we
actually,
have some tulips out front that, what's her name? Luana and Peggy have been really maintaining that little front area, and they have some new plants and some monkey grass that I donated. So, anyway, it looks really nice.
I walk by the window and they'll be out there working in the garden, and I thought they'd lost the patient.
Yes, God.
David, can you talk a little bit about the bad debt expense this month?
The bad debt expense is a result of the past 10 years. If you remember, we sent a lot of money to the different areas, and they have worked those, and they turned those back over to us. And we still have not recovered from they did not use bad debt expense in prior years. They just kept it and kept it and kept it. And now we're turning it over, and so that comes back. And it comes back to us periodically. And the last time that I spoke with people that deal with that here, I said, well, let's try to get as much of that off on us as we can so we can get rid of that debt. So that is a result really not the present time so much as it is still trying to catch up on the 10 years of bad debt. Because you realize if you go even 12 months, much less 10 years worth of months, that the chances of collecting it are going to be pretty slim. But it hadn't been worked at all. We are having those people work it, retail merchants work it. And as they work it for a period of time, which is basically about 240 days, then they send it back to us periodically, and then we write it off. And this just happened to be a heavy month. And that's because I asked for them to start trying to get more of it back to us so we can get it out. I'd like to get it out this year. As well as he, and I don't know if you got this, you guys know about the credit balances that are out there, because we've spoken about them before. And we're working on those. Diane is heavily working on those, and we're going to try our best to get those out this year too. So we're looking at about $100,000 of that. Again, that's something from years ago. We pay our current right now, and we have been, but we're still working on trying to get that out. If we didn't have to work so hard to catch up on what's happened over the past 10 years, we might not be hurting. We're having to catch up. We're having to play catch up.
Any more comments? I had something and it just went out my mind.
Okay, do I have a motion to go into executive session to review the QA report?
I'll make a motion, we go to the for QA reports.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded that we go into executive session to review the QA. All in favor?